And we
Okay, let's
are
go for it.
live. It is Transform Your Relationships Live, and I'm Laura Rubenstein here with the amazing and fabulous Dr. Roberta Shaler. Hi, Roberta.
Good morning, amazing and fabulous Laura Rubenstein. We start every day with a mutual admiration society. We're really glad that you're here, though, because that means you are invested in transforming your relationship. And always know that if you have a question, you can put it right in the comments and we'll incorporate it, the
Yep.
answer. So do that for sure. We want to help you transform your relationship, even if it's a little off topic.
Yeah, and if it's about relationship, it's on topic. And we have a general guideline of today where we're going, which is, have you ever been watching somebody else's relationship that just is super difficult? It's painful. You want to be able to do something, and it seems like, well, what do I do? And the other thing is, what if you step in and it's like not the right thing? What is the most powerful way to interact with that other person who's in this hard relationship? It's just so, you never know what's the right thing to do. Sometimes you feel like you're on eggshells. Sometimes you don't know if it's going to come back at you. There's just so many questions that swirl around in my mind when it comes to this topic. Where should we start, Roberta?
Well, yeah, there are so many questions because do you speak up? Do you not speak up? That's the first thing. Do you ask a question? Do you wait for them to speak up and tell you they're hurting? And basic is, do I see it and say I see it, or do I pretend I don't see it and wait to be told about it? Right?
Mhm.
And it's very difficult, and it depends how close the relationship you have with that person is as to whether or not you are going to be on a timeline that's more immediate or going to wait and see. You know, if you have a friend who's dating and you meet the person and you go, whoa, big red flag, and they're going, oh, he or she is so wonderful, and they're all in hog heaven about it, and you're saying, ooh, didn't like him, didn't like her right from the first second. Do you say something? That's a big question. And then people get into a relationship. Remember always, my favorite topic, talking about hijackals. Well, hijackals, these relentlessly difficult people that want to hijack the relationship for their own purposes, what do? Well, they want three things. They either want you to move in with them, marry them, or start a family with them, so that they, as I write about in Escaping the Hijackal Trap, so the gotcha factor is secured. Like, I got you nailed down. You're in too far to get out easily. And so if they're with a toxic person and they're dating them or whatever, that toxic person has it top of mind. How do I get to the gotcha factor?
How do I
And
get them so
so
I can relax and be myself and not worry about being
exactly.
so charming and lovely and gushy over them, and I can just get back to my own whatever it is.
And even worse, Laura, it's how can I get to the gotcha factor so that then I can stop pretending I care about them?
Ah, why is it so hard for someone who's a toxic person to be caring?
Well, they are caring about themselves and only themselves. Their caring stops at their skin, right? And the only time they care about you is if they want something from you and they're figuring out how to get it.
Yeah.
Now, just to be fair, there are levels of toxicity. Some people only get really toxic when they're really anxious, or they're really afraid, or they're really angry. But most people who are toxic all the time, just waiting to manipulate for their own good. And so it may not show up because you've become a compliant partner in it all. So it doesn't show up too often. And that's the whole idea. They want you to get more and more compliant with their outrageous requests. But the way that they give you those outrageous requests is usually in small increments. So, it's like warming up how to cook a frog. Put them in a cold pot and then slowly turn up the heat. They don't notice. And then they're done.
and then they're cooked and they're boiled over and they're a completely different person, and it's,
Then they're dead.
and then then what do? You're watching this frog being boiled, basically, and the questions we are raising is, when do you say something? And even if you say something, would it make a difference? There's a lot of people who, you said they're hijackal bait. They enable hijackals.
They attract them.
They attract.
They First of all, they attract them because they've been groomed by their environment growing up to find to be really attractive to hijackals because they're already malleable. They're already going to give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they've been raised to be really good people, so they're going to go the extra mile. They're going to say, oh, I can rationalize anything. I can justify anything. I'll make excuses for you forever. And so you've been groomed to be kind because you think that there's going to be balance in it. But when you're with a hijackal, you're kind, and then you're kinder, and then you're kindest, and then you're way over and doing everything for them. They're doing nothing for you. And then they say, well, what's wrong with that? That's the way I wanted it. And there you are. You're running on empty all the time, getting no refills. And every now and again, they throw you a bone.
They
You
keep you
know,
hooked in.
yeah, like they'll say something nice, and you're so hungry for something nice that you build it up into being, oh, they're back. They love me.
They're
And
not all
actually,
bad. They're really not all bad. So
no, and they're just going through stuff. So, back on topic, because we can go very broadly with all this. If you have a friend who you can see is being dragged down the opposite of a yellow brick road, you, what do you do? If they don't ask, do you speak up? You know, I think what you do is you ask a question. How's the relationship? Tell me what you really like about this person. Get them thinking. See if they are open to any critical thinking yet, right? If it's still all roses and rainbows and unicorns, there's no permeability for any kind of logic and sense and factual information. They're not interested. They think you're trying to burst their balloon. They'll even go so far as to say, don't you want me to be happy?
and it may be that rosy colored glasses state, and other people might not see it. What if it's beyond that state, where then they start letting their guard down and they got them already? That's when other people see it too, right? That's
And
when you
that's when they start defending them.
yes.
Then the next stage is that you say, well, that seemed really unkind. Oh, well, he's going through a bad patch. But he was going through a bad patch last week and the week before and the week before that. But
Mm.
they don't want to hear that because they're in defense mode, because they don't want to have made a poor decision. So rather than feel shame they made a poor decision, they will blame you for being critical. And so these are the things you have to recognize. These are stages that you have to think through before you take any of them on. If you have a friend or a family member who is being lured or devoured by a hijackal.
Is it too late once they are start in that defending stage to say anything?
Well, it's never too late to be, just well, it looks different from where I sit. I mean, you're entitled to be able to say that. But if they take offense to it or they're not willing to learn, you risk the friendship. Are you willing to risk the friendship over it? Well, that's a decision you have to make. Like, do I sit by and watch them go down this path and then pick up the pieces at the end? Or do I sit and watch them go down the path and then the hijackal will try and cut them off from you
Mhm.
because they already know that you don't like them. So,
So
the,
that person's a threat to them.
yeah, so they'll try and tell your friend that, I don't think your friend has your best interest at heart. I don't like the look on her face. She seems really judgmental. Do you find her critical? Why do you want to go out with her when you could stay home with me? Throw out things like that, and then there you are. You are excluded now because when you're madly in love and being hooked on hope in a hijackal, you just want to lean in because you think you're going to get something back. But it isn't that way. You lean in and then you fall over, and there you are in the abyss. And you've got to crawl your way out if you can see that possibility.
Yeah, I've always taken the approach that I'll be there for them, and if they are going down that rabbit hole, then that's their journey, no matter how heartbreaking it is. And if they ask for support, then I can offer that. The challenge comes when they try to bring you in and put you in the middle of situations, don't you think?
Well, I don't think in this case they want to do that because what they tend to do is align with the hijackal and start taking a stance against you. So, you don't want me to succeed. You don't want me to have love in my life. And this person's offering me all this, and you're saying, no, they're not. And that means that you're making them wrong. And so they don't want you either. And then they go and they say, my friend said, and the hijackal says, oh, that's ridiculous. She's not really your friend. And then they have to align with the hijackal because they've already bought in or they've been sucked in. And so now the alliances have shifted. So
Mm.
your friend has gone over to the dark side and is now having judgments about you.
Hmm. Well, that's because of what the hijackal said, right? It's kind of programming that person, that friend,
Sure,
to
exactly.
and
Yeah, and
then they're in a really tough spot. They feel like, well, help me out here. They say you're doing this and that and the other thing, and what?
no, of course not, honey. I have your best interest at heart. I love you. That's hijackal code for I have uses for you. I love you means I have uses for you. You are going to support me in various ways. Could be as crass as you're going to pay all the bills and give me a place to live and give me spending money. It could be you're going to support me and overlook all of the harshness that I provide. There's a quite a continuum of the way that support looks to be with a hijackal, but they're going to tell you that your friends are wrong. And then they're going to go and say to your friends, I know she has problems, but I'll take care of her. You can back off. Or, and that's what we call a smear campaign.
And
They'll
the
go to
minute
your
a
friends
friend
and
says
family.
something that the hijackal doesn't like and it gets back to them, the war's on.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
war is
And
on.
which brings us back to the initial question of today. How do you pick your battles? I mean, do you actually open the conversation that you know is contentious? It Because you care about your friend, you have that responsibility. On the other hand, it's a question, do you have that right? That's where the real gray area is, isn't it? Is it my responsibility in friendship, or is my right to speak up because we're close and we're a pre-existing condition to you meeting a hijackal, right?
And sometimes that person that's your friend is willing to let that go or is caught because they love you both. And then they don't know what to do and they're trying to sometimes they'll side with that person, sometimes it's too dangerous not to side with the other person. So what is there to do for a friend to say, they know that now you all know, all you friends of people in toxic relationships, you all know that if they're trying to protect themselves, your friend, because they've already been gotten, is there really anything that can be done? To me, it feels almost hopeless. Got to watch
Well,
them go down, have a train wreck, it's like,
it is a time issue,
mm.
right? Like, if you're going to be the spectator to this horror show, you have to know that it will end and it won't end well. And you have to decide at which point you stop watching. right? Like when you run out of popcorn or when you have been scared out of your mind 3 times. Do you turn it off or do you stay to the end and sit on the edge of your chair and then wonder what to do because they cut you out? Because at the end, they're going to make a decision. They're going to get rid of their friends and side with the hijackal, or they're going to need scooping up and long-term help and support. And yes, yes, you went through something really difficult, and you're wanting to say, I told you so, I saw it coming, and you can't. You've got to sit there and walk through the tears and I should have known better and is my picker off, and I know poor me, and ain't it awful, and walk through all that. And you're going to have to make a decision too whether you want to get into that train wreck.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's best left to the professionals, because you can walk beside them, but you can't align with them in a sense. And what I mean by that is, if they want you to say, oh, it's not your fault, anybody would have done that, it's normal and natural, it's a horrible journey, I'm sorry you went through that, all of those there things, which is great, and that's a friendship thing to do. But on the other hand, uh, do you want to do that over and over and over again for the same person? Because it's going to do it again, right? And if they don't get help, they're going to do that again at some level. And I know that sounds harsh, and there'll be people saying, oh, but they could change and they could learn. Only if they do the work. Because there's something intrinsic in our upbringing and our thoughts that allows us to become that hijackal bait. Something in that poor treatment is familiar, that we recognize it. We may not like it, but we recognize it because it makes us feel like a sense of belonging to the dysfunctional family we came from, or we're such a good person that we keep thinking, oh, well, they just haven't been loved. And I will demonstrate to them that I will love them to the ends of the earth. And then they'll feel loved. And then they'll be eternally grateful. And we'll walk into the sunset hand in hand. Well, neither of those scenarios is likely.
Mm.
So it's a big question whether you say something. And I say, don't say anything until you're asked. And, it is a bit like watching a train wreck in slow motion. But you also have to be honest and say, don't ask me questions you don't want to hear the answer to, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not just going to tell you what you want to hear because you want to continue going down this road. I have a broader view. I have a back row seat here. I can see all that stuff where you're in it. You're nose to nose with this person. I'm looking at it from the long view going, whoa, this is going nowhere good. And you're not going to like what I have to say as a friend. Like people come to me and they tell me their stories, and invariably they'll say, I've been to so many people and nobody saw what you see. Well, that's because that's my area of specialty. I have been in those relationships. I have used my training and expertise to help people to see it, to recognize it, to realize the impact, to self-empower, to then start making decisions about leaving, and then going through the process of leaving, and then recovering, and then rebuilding your life. That's what I do. But your friend doesn't do that. Your friend just wants the best for you. And they may walk through the swamp with you and hope that you're going to come out the other side. But you know what happens? You wear your friends out. After a while, your friend's going, I don't want to hear about it anymore. You're being abused. This person is unkind. They did it again. After a while, it's like, okay, if that's what you want, I don't want to hear about it anymore. And you wear your friends out. So there's pieces of that too where you have to know when you walk away, because Okay, if you're choosing to swim in the swamp, I don't want to swim in the swamp and I don't want to smell it either.
Mm. You mentioned a couple of things. First of all, I love that you have the expertise because you've been there and you show people that there's hope, that you don't have to stay there. You can get out of it. You can live fully empowered. And to get out, it's about taking on your personal power. And that's what we talk about here over and over and over in the show. It's not an easy thing to do when you're in a habit of being so nice, so kind, and so vulnerable to someone who will take advantage of that. And the second thing, I just wanted to highlight that. The second thing I wanted to mention was you said, you mentioned like you're being abused and they're wearing you out. They're wearing you out because they keep coming to you with these woe is me stories, and you're telling them they're being abused. When do you do that? When should you tell them they are being abused? Like a lot of people don't recognize it. That's because they're so used to it and they don't recognize
Yeah.
it as abuse. They do exactly what you said early on, which was say, oh, but if I love them enough, they will feel loved, and that's all they really need because that will transform them and make them stop this behavior.
Well, I've spoken a lot about my technique, the personal weather report, on our show. And I think this comes into play in answer to your question. You can speak about yourself. If someone did that to me, I would feel kind of taken advantage of and abused. Do you feel that way? You can use yourself as an example. You can bring up, well, it would feel like this to me, or I would feel put down, or I would have a question about that. So that's how it would work for me. How is it working for you? So you're not saying to them, you recognize you're being abused, because they're not going to be happy with that. But if you say, when someone did that to me, I said no, then, they can say, well, that's you. And then that gives you information. They're not ready to hear from you. So I think that using the personal weather report, speaking only about yourself and your experiences, and without relationship to anyone else. I always say my definition of assertiveness is to know you deserve to take up space and draw breath. And if you know that, then you have the right to say what you think, feel, need, want, remember, and prefer, as long as you did not mention another human by name or pronoun. So if you just say, well, when that happened to me, this, and I felt this way, and here's what I did, and you just let that lie, and the other person says, oh, that's harsh. Didn't you, you know, that doesn't sound like you cared. That doesn't sound like you were trying to nurture them. Oh no, okay, now you've got good information. They're in the, I can save this person. I can rescue. One of the writers that I really have appreciated is Parker Palmer, and he wrote a book called A Hidden Wholeness. And he has things called trust circles. And in these trust circles, the rule is that you don't fix, advise, rescue, or set straight. And I feel that way pretty much. If you're not a professional, that might be a good friend code. My job is not to fix, advise, rescue, or set you straight. I can be supportive. I can solicit by asking you questions to help you think about yourself, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm not going to tell you how to handle it. I'm not even going to dissect the situation for you. I'm just going to listen, which is what friends do. And if after a while you see your friend in a terrible state, you ask them, what do you think got you there? What do you think you could do? And you reflect back on them to draw out their creativity, their answers as to what they see and what's possible and what they want. And when you do that, then you're helpful. But if you tell them, they will often become defensive.
And they'll sink deeper into their state and they'll cut you off, perhaps. It's a really
Well, they don't want to be wrong. Who wants to be wrong?
hmm
Nobody wants to fall in love and then say, oh, I fell in love with, the hijackal from hell, right? And then say, look at me, how foolish was I to believe all those lies. They'll say that down the road, but when they're in it, for you to be supportive is to just say, wow, that sounds really difficult. I don't think I could put up with that. Or I found that setting a boundary at that moment really gives me an insight into whether that person has respect for me. And you talk about your own experience, but you're not telling them what to do. That's far more powerful.
Ah, and so we go on. We try to watch their difficult relationships and remain clear for them so that when they are ready to talk about it, they talk about it. When they're ready to do something about it, they'll do something about it. And you can be their trusted resource in a sense to help hold their hand out of it. But until they're ready, this is a touchy subject, and it takes practice even to
Mhm.
figure out how to ask those questions and when to ask those questions and not get sucked into making them wrong. I know I've done that. It's like, come on, just don't see this. You don't see this. It's so it's and because for me it's hard to see people suffer that I love, um and sometimes you just have to let them go on their journey because it's their lesson, it's not my life, it's their life, right?
Right.
And we had a couple of comments here. Ekaterina was saying that how these people, she says, in Russia, with the help of children of toxic parents, she wrote an article where she compared the influence of toxic people with the effect of the panopticon. I don't know what that is. Or maybe but these people, she's saying the toxic people occupy everything inside and outside in your head and out. And so it is there. It's almost like, when you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, they say you have a disease, right? You have an illness, you have something you're not able to function properly within, it needs treatment. So it needs treatment. It really does, if you want to, because it's inside your head now, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then she's saying this control becomes invisible. People start having dialogues with toxic people constantly, and this becomes the kind of direction for their life. And all friends are going to be devalued, like you said. So, really important comments
Yeah,
to.
they are. And hello, Ekaterina. She comes on also to my podcast and she has
Nice.
really great insights. So it's always nice when she contributes something. But yeah, absolutely. That's what's going to happen. You go to a friend to be affirmed and validated. Basically, you want them to say, oh, good for you, that's great, good choice. And when you can see that they're about to slip off the edge of the earth into something that's going to be detrimental to them, they don't want you to say, what are you doing? you know they want you to be happy for them, right? They want you to join in their positive feelings about it. They don't want you to put up the red flags and the cautions and the have you thought about this, and isn't that similar to what happened last time? And just a thought on that, if you have a friend who goes through this once and you walk with them and you debrief with them at the end, great. When they start down the second time because they didn't get any help, that's the moment of choice. You have to say, this sounds awfully familiar to what happened last time. And if you don't speak up, then you are now part of the enabling. Because yes, they may learn something and they may change their behavior. But if they don't get help, they're just going to repeat the behavior.
Mm,
And they're going to tell you, no, no, this person's not like that at all. And within 20 minutes of the relationship's life, it's going to be you're watching the decline of the relationship
the
that's
train
being
wreck.
eaten away. Yeah, the train wreck started with the train in the station, and we're going to have a great journey. And pretty soon it's getting scarier and scarier and going off the rails. And so you have to be willing to decide when you want to get off too. There is a time in a friendship when you just have to say, okay, we're going to let that one run and I'm not going to talk about it. Like I had a situation with a friend, and I just said, okay, we can talk about anything but that,
Mhm.
because I've said all that I have to say about that, and it's not something that the conversation goes anywhere good, and I'm not going to talk about it. So if you want to take the highway to hell, go right ahead. But at the end, I'm just going to say to you, well, that's the journey you chose. And I know that sounds harsh, but if they've already been down it and they decided to go down it again, don't wear your friends out with your enabling bad choices, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always choice, and the one choice is to like say, okay, we're not going to talk about this. Another choice is if they can't help but talk it, is saying, okay, well, maybe we're just not going to be friends, or we're going to reduce our amount of time we spend together. And if it's a loved one, it's similar though, don't you, would you say so? It's like, well, then we're just not going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this other things in
Yeah.
our lives.
It's like having a hijackal in your family. At what level do you engage? At what
Mhm.
level are you enabling them? And at what level do you want to say, I don't want to go to lunch with you
Right.
ever, right? and and you have to know yourself really well. And you have to have personal boundaries yourself. If somebody's asking you to be their mental health professional as opposed to your friend, you have to know where that edge is. Like, I don't know the answer. I don't know what you should do. I don't know how to help you. I don't know what that thought process will lead to. If you're feeling that way, why don't you get help?
Hmm.
Right? And I don't know. That's not my area of expertise, you might say to a friend. You know, you
Set a
can't
boundary
save them.
yourself,
Yeah,
right?
you just can't. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It just looks like a train wreck to me. I don't know what to do about it. I don't drive trains. So you just have to step aside, right?
I don't want to make
Let it
this
go by.
worse. And now it's taking me down. That's the thing. It could start taking you down as well. It could backfire on you. So
Or
this,
you could start dreading seeing the friend.
mm,
If I don't want to go, oh, you don't want to return their call, or you don't want to meet with them because it's just going to be a downer. Well,
yeah,
you have to speak up. Like, yeah, we can all go through. Like, I was really bothered yesterday. A woman that I've had on my show a couple times, she put on Facebook that her friend's child basically drowned in a pool. And they'd taken the baby to the hospital, and she wanted prayers for the baby. And then she said, people were asking, and then she said, no, the baby's not going to recover. They're just waiting for the father to come so they can remove the life support. And it's like that. Like, when do you remove the life support from a friend who has decided to take a trip that is going absolutely nowhere good? You don't want to breathe life into that. And if you can't breathe life into your friend to see something differently, then you just may have to let them go down that and extinguish that relationship, or extinguish their own life force by being in that relationship. And it's sad to watch, but after a while, you can't help. So
hmm.
it's very important to know, where you can offer life support and where you can't.
So it's not the most uplifting of endings, but we need to acknowledge it, and we want to have these difficult conversations about transforming relationship. There is always hope. There's always help, because there's always help. And I invite people to contact us, to be in touch, to get the support you need, whether it's with your own relationship or someone else's you've seen, because it's affecting you. These toxic relationships, they have mushroom clouds, and they do cloud other people. So, um,
There's fallout for sure. There's lots of fallout.
yeah,
And yes, friends are good when you're going through fallout, but don't ask them to go through fallout again. Learn.
learn. And if you need the professionals, get help.
Yes, call me. Go to beaclient.com. Let's talk.
Yeah. And we do have a little education if anyone wants to come over to your page, which is the page, your Roberta Shaler page. Um, Katerina is explaining what a panopticon is. So that's great. Thank
Yes.
you for your contributions. That's awesome. So we will be back in a couple of weeks with another edition of our Transform Your Relationships. Thanks so much for all your support and love and awesomeness, Roberta.
Yes, you too, Laura. Talk soon. Bye bye.